Hello at this Sunday's webinar with Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz, Peace Inside, Peace Outside. Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz is the president and dean of Valley Beit Midrash, the founder and the president of I'm hopping incorrectly here, Rabbi, so forgive me. Tzedek, and let me see, and the founder CEO of the Shamayim, the Haaretz Institute. Rabbi Shmuly completed his master's at Yeshiva University in Jewish philosophy, and he did a master's at Harvard in moral psychology and a doctorate in Epistemology and Moral Development. He's the author of 9 books on Jewish ethics and was listed twice in Newsweek's America's Top 50 Rabbis. Rabbi Shmuly lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, with his wife and children. And let me just advance over here and get this. I'll tell you, take you off, move your this. There. All right. Anytime, Rabbi, you can start.
Great, thank you. Thank you all so much for dedicating your Sunday morning to learning together. I've been invited to explore this topic with a group of thoughtful people. It's not my norm to rate. I'm gonna speak for about 45 minutes with some slides, and then move towards conversation Q&A for the last 15-20 minutes. I'm a big fan of the Mussar Institute. I've been doing Mussar work, what we used to call Mussar work, for quite a while, and have really gained from their book and their programs, as I'm sure many of you have as well. Once again, I imagine everyone has done this who would choose to be on a call like this, but if you have or you have not, why don't we begin with just 2 or 3 deep breaths. Melody. I want to start with this nigun is because it's about people or the beings walking with us. It's about not being alone. And in many, this can be a model for shalom, being connected. Now, who's walking with you may be people who are living, who you love. They may be people who are deceased, who you love. They may be angels, they may be God, they may be thinkers of the past, they may be attributes or notes. But I sing this melody, and perhaps many of you will know it, and if you don't, you'll get a chance to learn it. Just to meditate a little bit on is who travels with us? How can we keep them in our consciousness?
Do it. So it's a minute, whether you take it now or take it after this webinar,
to explore one specific area of ongoing stress in your life. What would it look like to bring a little bit more shalom to that area? It's our work not to just look at the generalities, but the particulars as well. For myself, a few months ago brought a foster child into our home, and it's an ongoing source of stress for me to know where this child will end up. Will permanently be in our home? Will they ultimately move? Will we ultimately move back to a biological family? And there's triggers that set off that stress. Now, one approach could be to embrace emunah. If a faith-based approach, simply remind myself when those triggers emerge that all will work out as it needs to, and to reduce that level of stress. That itself, in some ways, is under control, or at least this situation will work in the right way. That's for many and doesn't work at all for others. The approach of hishtadlut, of striving or taking an activist approach, in my case and in other people's case, would be how can I be more active to respond to that stress? Aside from sort of the passive or active, the faith-based or activist approach, the next level is to think of the consciousness that we bring when triggers emerge. What is the state of being that I with myself so that I respond when that emerges? And the goal is not self-deception. The goal is not to have a deep and spiritual practice to achieve inner peace and then pretend the outside world is all good or under control. The opposite, to really be active in the outside world in creating change and pretend that our inner world is at peace. But to actually be honest about this process, that both are very complex and messy, our inner world and our outer world, and that we have to do more. Of course, Mussar teaching is that it has to always begin with our inner world. The famous Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, you've probably seen enough that I'm not even going to quote, that enforces this notion that we start inside. Now, like Martin Luther King took an hour to write every day, not write an op-ed or write a speech, but journaling, because he knew that we can do the messy work of the outer world if we've done the equivalent amount of messy work in our inner world. The problem as to why many cannot address the complexities of the outer world, conflicts at work, conflicts at home, conflicts in the world, because there's a limited capacity internally. There's so much internal conflict.
I don't know.
Somebody on mute, so that others can hit mute. I hear someone talking. That they've done the work of the internal world to reduce that conflict, to equip them to deal with it on the outer world. So the goal is not to remove stress from our life. Right? It is how do we achieve a state of consciousness and of being in the face of stress? If we work a job that has stress, we cannot pretend like those responsibilities and urgencies don't exist or turn them off or less responsive to them. But when those triggers constantly emerge at home, at work, in news every day that we read about the bombing and the killing and the kidnapping, the question is not how do I not read the news? Not how do I not rise to the challenge in leadership. The question is, how do I bring a consciousness to those sources of stress that enables my inner world to be healthy and positive, my outer world to be deeply responsive. So of the initial framing. The first question I want to start with has to do with the time period we're in now. We're currently counting the Omer. I hope everyone is receiving the Mussar Institute daily email with the Omer Midah, which is a wonderful practice. And I'm thinking to myself, because oftentimes I just said, save it for later and get to it. But because we are counting the Omer, we are trying to connect Pesach with Shavuot. We're trying to say there was a physical liberation that happened from Egypt, from Mitzrayim, our own narrow place. And now we're moving towards a spiritual liberation, towards Torah. However we understand Sinai, receiving of Torah, that we are in this period of transition from external liberation to internal liberation, from physical slavery to spiritual enlightenment. In that process, one of the questions that arises for me is, why did that Torah, why a given? You imagined you leave Egypt, as you receive the Torah in Israel. It doesn't make any sense for it to be a diaspora project. Now, there's 24 responses we can give, and I won't list them all now. Just to name a few suggestions, one might say that this is about the universalistic components of Torah. That it's not particularistic just within Israel, implying it's just for Jews, but has a message and a mission for the broader world. One might suggest that about a separation of church and state, or religion and state, show that sovereignty is not interconnected with religion, that actually Torah can exist from statehood and maybe even must. One might suggest that about the importance of Judaism surviving in the diaspora. There's a whole host of reasons. But the first text I want to look at, and if you'll go to our first source, please. What was before that? Seems source number 1 is missing. Okay, so I'm gonna read source 1 to you. It seems to be missing from this.
Sorry, Jeff. It was a Q-tip.
I hear someone speaking there. Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz on the first source. Was the Torah given in the wilderness at Mount Sinai and not in the calm and peacefulness of Israel? This to teach us that true peace of mind does come from physical comforts or from an awareness of one's ultimate life goals. Focus on this. You are constantly traveling toward the goal and never be overly disturbed or broken. What Yerucham Levavitz, one of the great Mussar teachers, is teaching here is that had the Torah been given in the beautiful land of Israel, I'm not sure how beautiful it was then. At least you have the Mediterranean, you have mountains. I mean, it is naturally a beautiful land. But with the comfort also of feeling like you're in the promised land, so to speak. What the peace was external. When I go to my vacation in the Bahamas, when I have my dream house, when I finally clean my house for the day, right? When my desk is clean, then I'll be at peace, right? Or in different settings, when my child is asleep, when my child visits home from college, whatever the case is. But actually, peace has to primarily and initially be internal states, right? And that it has to be a consciousness we bring that even in the face of external turmoil or complexity is still deeply present. And this is not a small matter that we're suggesting. We're not merely talking about 10 steps towards a less stressful life. The Torah is ultimately about peace. I mean, this is the essence of what we're talking about, I think. That we're striving to do halachta bedrachav, to emulate the ways of God, the compassionate ways. And one of the names of God is Shalom. That emulating this way of being, but this very name of what would it look like for someone to say, here comes Shalom. Right? When we walk into the room, here comes a person who brings, it doesn't mean they're a stress-free person, but the person who brings this attribute with them, right? Brings this attribute to conflict, right? Brings attribute to as a way of being. And that it's not necessarily an end in itself. Being able to do more and give more. The process of living with Shalom as opposed to achieving a world of Shalom. Now, it's remarkable what the Creator put into place for ourselves. In that we have billions of complex cells inside of us that have been cooperating for billions of years, right? And the question is, why in the external world does it not work to the same way? This level of cooperation, this level of Shalom. Now, of course, even though 99.9% of the cells in our body may be working perfectly and in sync and collaboration, only 0.1 or 0.01% being off is a problem, psychically and physiologically. But external world, this is also true. Nature can be operating correctly, but it only takes a change in nature to have a massive hurricane or in international relations or in conflict in a relationship in the home for something to set off a storm. And so the question is, how do we attend to that minutia? And here, we're not dealing with peace as an absence of violence, peace of an absence of stress, but how to achieve an actual positive state within the self and in the world. That on these four levels of tikkun, on the micro and the macro. Tikkun, that's me, the repair of self. Tikkun bayit, the repair of home. Tikkun medina, repair of the country, however we understand our larger people. Tikkun am. And tikkun olam, repair of the world. That these four are deeply interconnected, right? That when we talk about peace of self and peace of world, in some ways, we're talking about the same thing. That Nachman taught that if understood all of internal conflict, we understand all external conflict, right? That the wisdom is within us, within our own existential angst, within our own internal tensions, that we can learn the wisdom to resolve those tensions, the wisdom that is needed to address external tensions. At a level, we might suggest that, as well, that I am within the entire world, right? To some extent, I exist as a separate being. I exist immersed within the world, right? That the interconnected ties of economics, of relationships, of nature makes it so that I can't be separated out, but also that the whole world is inside of me. Further, we might suggest that everything is within God. Pantheism, not pantheism, that everything is God and God is not separate from that, but God, that everything is within God, and God in everything, and God is still beyond that, transcendent to that. Also that God is within us. I mean, that's obvious. The whole Elohim theology, that God is within us, the spark, but all that we are in God, right? And projections go back and forth. Baal Shem Tov talked over and over about mirrors, about how our world, our inner world, and our external world are mirrors to one another. One classic Mussar approach is about how anywhere we critique anything, any establishment, if you go through your Facebook feed, primarily it will be Trump and Hillary. But truth is, we're constantly in a state of judgment, of judging. Do I like this food? How do I feel about what someone said? Was that good or bad email I just received? Actually, that when we critique another, the Punto was adamant, and it's throughout Chassidut and throughout Mussar, that critique is merely a critique of self, right? That actually what is agitating us so much reveals more to us about ourselves and our own growth. That we shouldn't address those injustices, name those problems out in the world, but also that it has to have a spiritual component of saying, why is that aggravating me so much? And what it look like for me to address that? It can also have a behavioral component. I think of a famous story of Gandhi where a mother approached him and said, Gandhi, tell my son to stop eating sugar. And Gandhi said, come back in 3 weeks. And the mother said, please, Gandhi, tell my son to stop eating sugar. He said, back in 3 weeks. Comes back, Gandhi, please tell my son to stop eating sugar. He points at the boy and says, don't eat sugar. And the mother says, wonderful, but why did it take so long? He said, because I'm still eating sugar that whole time. And that the point was that the notion of critiquing, while we ourselves haven't changed yet, or attempting to guide others with ourselves doing that work, is of course absurd. Go to our next slide here. remind ourselves of the importance of shalom. We skip slide 2 again. Let's see if we slide 2. Sorry, one. Some sources that we are familiar with, at least the first, but the heads back in the game. Hillel and Shammai receive a tradition from them. Hillel says, be the disciples of Aaron, of Aaron, loving peace and pursue peace, love people, and bring them closer to the Torah. My great chavruta, Rabbi Amy Alberg, I don't know if she's on the phone or not, who I had the privilege of doing Mussar study with, is Rebbe and model of this, who's maybe you studied with her in this program already sessions ago, who was really this work of being a Rodev Shalom, of learning how to do the inner and outer work of peace. And if you have picked up her recent book, I certainly hope you will. And this work has to be central to all of our lives. And what it means to live Torah, this is just as important as not eating pig, right? Or having a Shabbat practice. That what is my daily and weekly and hourly being a Rodev Shalom? What does it look like in my life to be sure that I am bringing more good than bad to the world, and bringing more peace than turmoil, that I'm helping to bring strengthen social bonds rather than weaken them. I'm going to ensure that family and workplace and society have healthier relations rather than more toxic ones. The Chafetz Chaim in Mirat HaLashon, that's the second source on this page, right? Peace for one and pursue it with your enemy in your place and pursue it in other places, with your body and pursue it with your material resources. Seek it for your own benefit and pursue it for the benefit of others. Today and pursue it tomorrow. Reference for seek it tomorrow. It's that one should not despair, think that one cannot make peace. Rather, one should pursue peace today and also tomorrow, the day afterwards, until one reaches it. It's never fully attained, right? One of the favorites of the Midrashim is of the rabbinic teachings. That if you are planting a tree and you hear Mashiach has come, you hear the Redeemer has come, what should you do? Keep the tree. Now, what is ultimately, if the redemption is here, if peace is attained, why would we continue to work at the tree? And part of that answer may be actually the Redeemer leaves if I'm planting. That the Mashiach can only be here if I continue my planting. That's to say, there's no time where, peace here, my is done. Rather, the Shalom can only exist simultaneously with the effort, right? The Emunah with the Hishtadlut, the Shalom also with the turmoil, that only in my continuous work can new stages or revelations of peace be revealed. And to realize how many opportunities we have to do this, there's a little parable I like to return to, I guess a question, that someone approaches you and says, I'm going to give you $86,400 every day for the rest of your life. Right? Wonderful. Where do I sign up? Here's the only condition. You have to spend $86,400 every day. You have it by the end of the day. Now, in a sense, God has said this to us. You are given 86,400 seconds every day of your life. Right? The question is, at the day, they're all gone. You can't store them in the bank. They're gone. How many of those did we infuse with the sense of urgency, this sense of commitment, that I'd be a force for shalom in the world? Maimonides suggested in Hilchot Teshuvah, in his around repentance, that we should constantly view the world as a scale, and our very next act will tilt that scale towards the redemption of the world or destruction of the world. How many of us really view our action in such a way? We're going to get off this call and have a plate of pancakes. We're going to go off and go play some tennis, read a book. But my very next action is going to determine the fate of the world. That's pretty tough to live with. Imagine if we lived our lives that way. To imagine matter that much. The way I impact another matters that much, right? That the way I talk to this next person may determine the level of shalom in the world, right? In a way I can't even begin to predict. And this, it means we not only, of course, have to be very self-aware, very self-conscious, but very other-conscious and very other-responsive, to letting our sense to the face of the other, not to some abstraction of who the other is. And if you never read the book, The 5 Languages of Love, I want to recommend it. Just a reminder for those who have read it, what this is about. It's about the problem, the way we tend to give love to others tends to be in the way that we need love. Right? Give my love to another in the way that I need it. Right? But actually, he suggests that there's 5 different languages of love. Some of us feel loved when we receive gifts. Right? Some of us feel loved when we receive praise. Some of us went through touch, through hugs or through sex, through kisses, holding hands. Some through receiving favors and through time spent with us, right? We feel loved when someone just sits in the room with us, even if they're not talking with us. Again, the problem is that we tend to give love to another the way that we need it. And the challenge is for our children, for our parents, for our spouses, for our partners we have in life, is to give love the way they need it. And so too with shalom. I may feel like I'm at peace, I'm in a healthy relationship, if the other has given me X or Z. I listen to me. That you've, brought a gift into our encounter. I feel that you've made a concession. Right? But the other has a very different barometer, a very different measure for what shalom looks like for them, what they need to feel respected and like in a safe place. And the question is, how in each of our relationships do we not really impose that own self-need, make sure we're responding that need for others? Now, it's always easy to talk about in abstract, and I need everyone to think about a recent sort of stress or tension and try to infuse it back into that moment. I'll give one of my own. So at 3 a.m. last night, the little being in my home, 3 months old, who had to say, had a lot to say from about 3 to 4:30 a.m., and I was not in a state of peace with this little being as I was rocking him back and forth. And the question is, how when that moment emerges tonight, I mean, I hope it doesn't emerge tonight, but it emerges tonight, how do I, in that moment of actual turmoil, bring a different state of consciousness to that moment? And one of the famous teachings which I love and to share comes from Shlomo Ibn Gabriel, the great Kabbalist, who used a metaphor of a string instrument that actually, if you want to bring peace to another or any sort of inspiration, you don't really go and strum their string, right? Their instrument, that would be a violent act. But rather, what we know about 2 string instruments is that when they're across from each other, if you strum your own string, the one across from it will also vibrate. And so the question is, how do we bring ourselves to a state of peace in order for that to affect the one across from us as well? So there is a process of being responsive to the other, but the Mussar approach also is primarily to first study one's own inner life and allow that to affect the space as well. That I am merely a practitioner trying to bring it to the other without initially starting inward. That is ultimately futile. Jump to the next source 3. I have a link to this. We got it right. Beautiful. It's from Rav Kook. Just to get a sense of how much appreciation I have for Rav Kook, we named our firstborn child Cook. His name is Meir Lev Kook, so his initials are MLK. And we wanted to squeeze Cook in there. And he's a thinker who continues to challenge me. And he talks about the ascent of everything toward the holy. Differentiation of creation, the difference between the holy and the ordinary is a fact. Of their distinctiveness would be destructive. A concentration on understanding and experiencing this great fact of differentiation contributes too much fruitfulness of spirit. After all of this, one comes to the clear perception that these are passing phenomena. The exertion of everything toward holiness, toward brotherhood, toward equality and delight is the eternal vision that animates every noble spirit. Of differences is a persistent phenomenon engendered by temporary circumstances. If you haven't read Jonathan Sachs's The Dignity of Difference, I want to recommend it. It's how to appreciate the level of differentiation between human beings and to see how our different nature is actually a wonderful gift in the world and not really a problem. Reviews. The general conception of striving for equality, which is the basis of kindness and the pure love of people, is seen in a mystical interpretation as bringing up the sparks that are scattered among the husks of unending existence, a great vision of transforming everything to absolute holiness in a gradual increasing of love, peace, justice, truth, and compassion. Now, what Ruck is dealing with is in typical Hegelian fashion, because Hegelian thinker is there's a synthesis and an antithesis at war and clash, and that ultimately after that conflict will emerge a higher form of there was a tension between thesis and antithesis, and a synthesis. That any conflict is good, right? Conflict is good, and emerging from that tension is a higher form of understanding and of truth. And he believes that society is in a state of progress because of those conflicts. That when dismiss or disparage those conflicts, we look at how those tensions are leading us to a place. Conflicts are opportunities. And so he explains on the famous quote, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Sages bring peace to the world. He says, that's a joke. Our sages don't bring peace to the world. What do you mean? The whole Talmud is about machloket, all of argument and difference, right? But but ultimately what that's about is that higher shalom is built upon conflict. Sages bring about peace because they bring argumentation, right? And this is true in our relationships. That a relationship that doesn't have argumentation, doesn't have conflict, is not a healthy relationship. It means that all this stuff of tension is being dismissed. It's being removed or internalized but not expressed or resolved. That actually healthy relationships involve argumentation and conflict, and through that conflict, those new conflicts, hopefully they're advancing, they're attacking or disparaging the other, but exploring and sharing tensions and problems in order to be collectively and collaboratively resolved. And in that process, we get a higher level of shalom. And of course, require a high level of solidarity, a high level of sense that we're in this together with our friends and with our enemies. To say about my enemy, I'm together with you, right? Everything is telling us that we against one another. It's a zero-sum game. It's a scarcity of resources. I know you're going to win. In fact, there's real tension here. We have to acknowledge that, and we have to figure out how we're going to address this or resolve this. But only we're in this together. Ultimately, the fate of the world means that it's going to be destroyed or redeemed, and that we're in this together. Ultimately, this land, we're going to have to figure out how to live in together. Ultimately, in this country, right, whoever wins the presidency, we're going to have to learn to live together. The winner of that is not going to determine the future of peace in this country. It's going to be how we as citizens, right, rebuild societal trust, how we learn to civically engage amidst loss and within that tension, how we're going to re-heal wounds that are created from such a divisive process, right? And this travels to other cases as well. Just a recent story you may have seen that inspired me, which is slightly on topic and slightly off topic, was there was a soldier who came back from war, and a ton of ribbons, a ton of awards for his heroic work overseas, but pretty immediately got a DUI. He got a DUI and he had high levels of PTSD. And the judge looked at this veteran and said, look, I have no option but to give you 24 hours in jail. This is just the standard for what you have done. So they handcuff him and walk him to the cell, and it follows him. And then into the cell, and the judge walks into the cell. The prisoner says, Judge, what are you doing here? And this is the door. You're here for 24 hours, there for 24 hours. And he went into the cell as well. which was that we're in this, right? He made a mistake. He was affected by the interconnected forces of our society. He was a soldier for a country, got PTSD, and found himself in a DUI, and any judge would have said, sir, but I'm in this with you. I'm in this with you. Right? So you're a stranger, even though you've broken the law, I'm going to be in the cell with you. The question is, those we have conflict with, hack ourselves in the cell with them, so to speak, to say, we are enemies, we are in conflict at this moment, we are in a moment of toxic state, but I'm not running away from you. And let me be clear, there are relationships in the world that we need distance from, temporarily or permanently, to ourselves or others safe. But we, in most of our relationships, ensure that we not merely run away, really wrestle with has to happen. Social change work, unfortunately, is dark and messy. I believe that social change work has to be grounded in love and peace in order to create positive change. When it's driven by guilt or hate or anger, we may spread darkness. Right? So that means that a lot of people who have good values and are working for change, but are not driven by an inner state of peace and love, I don't perfected, right? It's never going to be perfected for us. A level that is healthy, aware that we may be doing more harm at times. So verse 4, and I'm aware of our time. I want to take no less than, I think, 8 or more minutes of sources. We're not going to get through most of what I have here. And then move to conversation. First one here, the Hebrew seems to have come out funny on that. I apologize for that. No, it's the right Hebrew. It just is really spaced out in a way that's hard to read. This is Midrash Tanchuma. A person of learning participates in public affairs and serves as judge or arbiter. They give stability to the land. But home and say to themselves, what affairs of society to do with me? Why trouble myself with the people's voices of protest? Let the soul dwell in peace. If you do this, you overthrow the world. Our desire for peace cannot impede our leadership. I can imagine a model of peace that says, forget it. The world's cynical. The world's going, burning up. And every politician is dirty, and every business person is just trying to make money, and everyone there is motivated by greed. I'm just going to find inner peace. I'm going to enjoy reading books and writing and meditating and do all the stuff I love to do. And I'm going to be a person of shalom, right? That person, the rabbi said, overthrows the world. That it's not enough to merely be a person who doesn't put negativity into the world. But we have to be people who bring that state of peace responsibly to leadership. I don't mean there's leaders and followers, but in the Ron Heifetz sense, that each of us has moments of exercising leadership. Every one of us has moments of exercising leadership. And to do that, we have to be prepared. Now, this prophet of the Jewish tradition, according to the Torah, Rabbeinu Moses himself was not prepared. What happens? It said at the burning bush, at the sneh, that him, but that it appeared to him, and then he later saw it. And commentators, Ramban, Nachmanides in particular, said, why say it twice? It should have only said it once. It appears to him, and he saw it. It shouldn't say it twice. It says it because he missed it. The great prophet of the Jewish tradition had a burning bush burning right in front of him, but he couldn't see it, right? Because he wasn't spiritually prepared, the Ramban said, right? In order to see it. And so too, there are opportunities for us to bring shalom right in front of us. But if we have done the inner spiritual work, we're not prepared to see it. That there's conflict right in front of us, inside of us, at work, out in the world, where we can be an agent of change. But we have to first have done that work. And the question as to how to do that first has to start with a commitment. When am I able to pause from what I'm doing? Let me give an example I recently saw on YouTube that really inspired me. Do we have any Garth Brooks fans out there? I'm not a huge Garth Brooks fan, even though I lived in Texas for some years. But I saw this YouTube, and it really made me pause. We're in a song in his performance. I saw a woman up in the very front row holding a poster that said, "This morning, Garth tonight." And Garth Brooks saw this poster, "This morning, Garth tonight," and stopped his show to embrace this woman, to embrace her. I was moved by this, not only because my mother was recently going through cancer and going through chemo, but because it raised the question for me, what would it take for me to stop my show? Now, Garth Brooks is an expert performer. You don't stop a concert. You don't stop your show. But he's so moved by this woman, right, demonstrating perseverance, that she was going to celebrate life amidst her suffering, that he was willing to pause his show. What would it take for a burning bush to emerge in our day to say, I'm not only just going to rush to the coffee shop and rush to my desk and rush to my next task, I need to actually stop. Rabbi Tanya tells a famous story of how he was eating Talmud with his grandson, and they started to cry. The grandson continued to study, and the grandfather went and calmed the baby. And he scolded his grandson, and he said, if the cry of the baby does not get you to stop learning your Torah, then your Torah is null and void. Cries of the external world do get us to stop from our peace practices, then that peace is worthless. Right? Only if our work on our inner world, our Mussar work, our Midot work, our spiritual, our meditation work, only if that transfers out in the world does it really have the value that the Torah strives for it to have. Now, the last 2 or 3 comments I want to make, and then I want to open up the floor, and I'm going to skip over our next 5 or 6 sources. You don't know what the page you're going to talk with, which is the interpretation of Noah, that Noah is a person who reaches a state of peace, seemingly reaches the ark, which is paradigmatic womb, the divine womb, or place of returning to in a teshuvah process, a place of safety or security. But the Hasidic teachers talk about him as a tzaddik in peltz, that he's a righteous person with a fur coat on. Which is to say that there's 2 ways to get warm when it is cold out. One way is on a fur coat to keep yourself warm. The other is to light a fire that will keep those around us warm. And speaking Noah and saying he was the type who put on a fur coat, and he's really a tzaddik in peltz. They're really critiquing him. They're saying, oh, the Torah says he's righteous, so I can't remove that. But really, there's a certain type of righteousness who can self-warm, the type who can, kind of keep themselves at peace. Perhaps nominally with a story from Mother Teresa, my great Rebbe, Mother Teresa, who is in a sense represents the opposite of tzedakah from a Jewish perspective. I think, and this is a whole other conversation, but tzedakah from a Jewish perspective, in verse 6, which I can't see because it's a slide, but maybe it'll be posted after. It talks about how only tzedakah saves us from death, and hence the Jewish model of tzedakah is one of which we are not merely doing an act of kindness, but obligation. We're not going beyond our self-interest, but actually of our commitment to self-interest. And Mother Teresa leaves her homeland, she uses her mother tongue, and she goes out into the streets and gives herself selflessly to strangers in a foreign country. It's a remarkable model in a certain way, even though I think it's different from the paradigmatic Jewish model. And what you would hear on a daily level in Calcutta was the crying of elder people from dumpsters, and climbed into the dumpster one day where she heard a cry from an elderly person. And the person was a great pain. And her, why don't you just die? The woman said, I can't die because I'm so angry at my sons leaving me here, that I'm in this dumpster alone. And Lisa pointed a finger at her and said, "Forgive them now." And the woman closed her eyes and forgave them, and then died. And forgiveness not only let us die, but more importantly, can let us live. And I thought how resolving conflicts not enable us to die, but more importantly, enable us to live, to actualize our potential, to grow in our midot, purify our approach, to purify and refine our character, to grow closer to God, closer to those we love. We have to let go of those toxic tensions, those resentments, those conflicts, but not merely wish away through a meditative practice. There is a spiritual component in isolation, but do messy work that our tradition charges us to do, that we can actualize the tune atzmi, the repair of ourselves, the repair of our homes, the repair of our society, and the repair of the world. Thank you all for learning with me. I very much invite and welcome some questions and conversation for the next 15 minutes on this last slide, and forgive me for not going through about 5 or 6 of them. That's okay. What we needed to do. Here are some ways to stay in touch on Facebook or Twitter. Here's a website you can sign on if you happen to be local, and there's some social justice groups as well, and a website that I have there with some resources. The Mussar Institute should be your primary some resources here for continuous work and a bunch of the great books they recommend. And here are ways to stay in touch with me. I'm not sure how this works, but I'm sure technology folks behind this will get us now.
Anyone who has a question for the rabbi can use the chat box, which appears in the bottom of the right-hand side of their screen. Rabbi, can you see that chat box?
I see a chat box.
Well, not anything that comes in through the chat box, I will read to you.
Great.
Everybody who wishes to ask a question or send a comment can use the chat box in the bottom of your screen. And open that to you right now. Too many at the moment. Rabbi, let's see. The rabbi himself here has written quite a few books on his own, and those are among them. So free to part Rabbi's literature as well. And I think, Rabbi, you also were a bit of a TV star, as I recall.
Well, where did this come from?
That's the PBS.org site.
Okay, so something my assistant goes. Wait, did you put this together?
I'll put this for you.
Oh, okay. These last, So if you have Netflix, you can watch a documentary. They followed 2 students studying to be rabbis, 2 studying to be imams, 2 to be priests, and 2 studying to be pastors in our studies, a decade ago. And I was pretty in ways to be a part of this. My wife doesn't love the documentary because I was dating a different young woman at the time in the film, but it is an interesting film, though embarrassing for me at sometimes, about our journeys, our religious journeys. Thanks for that.
I saw it. I couldn't resist.
Thanks.
Any comments for the chat box here? I'm reviewing. If you were either thought provocative to everyone is internalizing them, or no one's up there in the chat box at this point, in which case, if you want, Rabbi, we still have 10 minutes left. If you want to go back to your slides, we can...
No chat box.
It's a chat in the bottom right. We have something from Paul Feldman here. Rabbi, speak more to the relationship between finding internal peace and using those tools for external peace.
Well, perhaps that was a way of saying, Rabbi, you didn't actually address the topic. Right? That seems to be the question of our session, of what are the actual tools to achieve that. And I think, in a sense, what we've tried to explore is that the course is always journaling self-consciousness. Where are these tensions emerging in our internal world? What's triggering them? And work, and we all have different ways of doing that work through our own Torah learning, maybe psychoanalysis or conversation with loved ones, with a chavruta of coming to process, or through a vod or whatever mechanism we have of coming to process those sources of of pain and conflict and stress we have, and them coming to navigate. And here there's no universal rules or principles. Coming to navigate how we bring resolution to those and how we higher state of consciousness to those, and then bringing that wisdom to the external world. The same as the rest of our midot work and the same as the rest of our Mussar work. I don't think it has different rules. Rabbi Nachman, as we already shared, Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Shem Tov say that in our internal world will help us to navigate it in the external world. And then from Ibn Gabriel, that we can't merely strum someone else's string. We can't merely tell someone else how to do that. Right? There are certainly best practices, and I've recommended, a few books. Once again, Rabbi Amy Alberg's book. I'm not sure if she's on, but want to recommend her book again, where she's talking about this stuff and a bunch of the other Mussar works. But that it has to start with him and transfer out. The last thing I'll say about that. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Mussar movement, who we've all learned a lot from, I presume, famous story around Pesach, where he has to certify a matzah factory, and after inspecting the whole factory for being kosher, they said, "Oh, we can now certify our factory. Everything looks great." And he said, "I will not certify your factory. What's wrong? We did everything right. It's not too long, and there's no unkosher products here." He says, "The women who are working back there in the back rooms, overwork them. Their hands are bloody. And you give them no breaks and don't pay them properly." In fact, when we do the Mussar work, it necessarily should lead us to higher levels of sensitivity suffering around us. Thank you.
Question, or more of an inquiry from Michelle and Richard. Have the difference between the relationships we need to just let go, those we need to struggle with?
Wow, that's a really difficult one. It's one that I'm in my personal life right now myself struggling with. I think that relationships are very, very rare, really to cherish. And so I think our initial inclination of dealing with something that is not deeply harmful, if someone, of course, is physically abusive, deeply emotionally abusive, we have to secure ourselves from those. But I think the initial thrust of Jewish tradition is that we really have to seek to repair relationships, mend them. It doesn't mean that every person we knew from high school who happens to be a Facebook friend randomly has to be our best friend, right? There are relationships we could say, okay, when I was 8, they were my friend, and when I was 12, they were my friend, and when I was 40, they were my friend, and they mean something different to me. That's okay. But really significant ones, the siblings, the parents, the spouses that we work with, right? I think we have to be highly cautious to write them off or discard them as insignificant. And not only because, I saw a stat recently that American men, and it's much different for American women, but American men in the 1980s had an average of 3 men they could rely on in a time of crisis. The American man today has 0.6 people they can rely on. I'm not sure what it means to have 0.6 friends, right? But for American women have stronger social bonds than American men do. But relationships have deteriorated, and that is the defensibility relationships. We feel I can solve a marriage at will, I can change jobs at will, I can change friends at will, I can hit unfriend with a click. I think the inclination has to be not only are relationships very important, but also we can learn a lot from that relationship that is giving us tension. And wisdom is not easy to come by, and we should look to find that. Now, in those rare situations where we do need to dissolve a relationship, and of course those situations do exist, a whole other set of wisdom. At the moment, I just want to make the case for doing with a lot of caution.
Any question, or can use the chat box again. The chat box can be opened by going to the top of your Cisco WebEx Meeting Center screen.
We have 5 minutes left.
Chat.
Yep. Left, so hopefully another question or two. Yeah.
This one. Can you address internal practices that cultivate peace? It is meditation.
Yeah. So I think that meditation is not the answer. There are meditation practices which I'm engaged with. I'm sure most people in this call are. But it is a answer, but not the answer. In that I know a lot of people who are at peace in their meditation practice, but does not have a carryover effect. Does not help them to lead more responsibly. It does help them to relationships that have tensions. It makes them feel healthy for themselves, or more connected to the divine, or more at peace for that moment. And so I think crucial that meditation practices have a Mussar component to them. What I do think is crucial is having a spiritual chavruta, someone that we can honestly back and forth ideas of tension, that we are journaling, we are writing about the everyday encounters that stress, that challenge us with peace, about the issues in the world where there need to be peace, and that we are proactively writing about those opportunities to achieve peace. That more than a meditation practice, interested in bringing a consciousness of peace to our everyday encounters. The meditation practice is crucial to that. I think the practice of so here's one that I will suggest, and one that I used to do more than I currently do, but I continue to try to do. If we, in between a transition between each activity we do, to 1 minute of meditation, in between going from this phone call to that phone call, walking from this office meeting to that office meeting, walk from my garage into my home, 1 minute and meditating. What am I transitioning into now? And what consciousness do I need in this new space? Right? A lot of people bring the baggage of their previous space to the space. They bring tension of their last meeting to their next meeting. Right? The stress of their work life into their home life. They bring the stress of their home life into their work life. Right? And the question is, how do I have at least 1 minute, right, of doing that? How do I not use my car ride, not merely for another work call, but to elevate my consciousness to a higher state. So I used to do this most because perhaps I was a weirdo. People used to find me outside their office in a deep state of meditation. I'm standing outside their door with my eyes closed. You want to be kind of savvy on how you embrace such a practice. But I think that we only learned to not fill our transition spaces with more noise and social media noise, but with the state intentionality of what am I entering and what does that person need from me in this space. Let's take one more question if it exists.
Scott wants to know, I didn't quite catch the term pantheism, God being in the world whilst being transcendent.
Okay, wonderful. It's a good place to close on. Now, I don't want to impose this theology as necessary. I'm sure there's a whole range of theology here. This is just one that speaks to me. I've learned again from some other. So someone like Spinoza, he believed that everything was God, and God is God's not separate from any of that. He is divinity, and we say simply that that's the case in a deterministic world. Others will assume there's a God external who can intervene or not intervene. But pantheistic, that's P-A-N-E-N. Well, pan means all, everything, and means within, because it's God. So God is within everything, right? And yet, God is still the creator of everything and separate from everything, separate from that creation. And so, where this theology becomes relevant for me is this understanding that not only is God within us, but that we are within God. And that raises the bar as to how much is at stake for a shalom in the world. It also brings a certain level of solidarity. It was said when psychology emerged as a force for atheism, that what do you mean there's a God? We merely construct God in our own image. It's not that we're in the image of God. We can construct God in our image, right? Now, of course, that is true. We did construct God in our image. The Hasidic thinkers said, and that's what makes God true. From a realistic, all of us construct God in our own image, and all of those images become true. Because it's from our own inner godliness that we construct God, and that makes it true because it comes from godliness. As all of these projections of what is, in fact, part is God in the world. So within this work, and then I don't want to impose this. I think people can do this work from. My hope is not an atheistic place, but at least from a place of wonder or agnosticism, a place of humble inquiry. But for self, it's a deeply theistic practice. Understanding that how much is at stake is that God's name is Shalom in the world, and we're not only trying to achieve a non-violent world, a world where the godliness of people is brought to full beauty, but that also the godliness of the world is achieved, that Shalom is brought into the greater world and actualized into a state of divine consciousness. And that has an internal component and an external component. And that here I'll close on this point, that our fate and destiny as individuals is deeply interconnected and tied up with the fate and destiny of every other human being, every being, sentient beings and also, spiritual beings. And that our state and God's state is tied up, right, in the Heschel sense of God searching for man. In fact, that God's destiny and fate is interconnected with our own as well. I leave us all with the bracha, with the blessing, and I hope you'll send the bracha to me as well, that we continue to be, Rodfei Shalom, we continue to be agents of peace, so that we can live with more happiness, interconnection, more godliness, that we live in more healthy homes and workplaces and a world, but also that we achieve through our leadership, through the emanation of our own being, a world that is infused with deeper respect and tolerance and love, and that together we can heal the world if we're committed to doing this for every second of the 86,004 seconds we're gifted every day. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. This is Jeff Agron, Director of Operations of the Mussar Institute, and I would just like to thank everybody who was on with us this evening and everybody who will be watching this recording later on, and eventually will be put on our YouTube channel. I do want to thank Evan Silbert, who was at the controls for all our webinars, handling all the technical aspects for our entire 6-part series. I'd like to thank Dahlia Brill, who was the producer of the series and arranged it. I'd of course like to thank all of our presenters, starting with Rabbi Eilberg, who is on the webinar. Also Rabbis David Jaffe, Daniel Roth, Sheldon Lewis, Mark Golias, and of course Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz today. So it's been a wonderful series. We hope you've enjoyed it. I will be sending out a link to this webinar tomorrow with a copy of the slides so that everybody can take a look at the text at their own leisure. And we hope you've enjoyed the series. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any feedback, you can just email me at jeff@mussarinstitute.org and let me know what you think and for future years' webinar series. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Rabbi. And everyone have a great day.